Today's guest is Neneh Deallo. She's the Chief Diversity Officer at USAID, and by the way, the first one at USAID, which is awesome. And Neneh and I met when we both worked at the Millennium Challenge Corporation. Thank you so much for joining me today, Neneh.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy.
So for those who haven't worked with you for a long period of time like I did, talk about your background, where you're from, who you are, and what you do.
Well, I always start off with saying that I'm a born and raised New Yorker. New York is in my heart, no matter where I live, and grew up in Queens, New York. You know, parents were hailed from West Africa, came to the United States, to pursue their education, where they met at the United Nations at a reception, and then they had me and my brother and my sister. So I attended private school all my life there. I think New York and being raised in New York, to immigrant parents, almost kind of set me up to, on this journey of where I am today, right? Serving as the Chief Diversity Officer for an international development organization where I never thought I would be. I went to the United Nations International School. So I was surrounded by diversity my entire life. My best friends from childhood through high school were either Filipina, Indian, Ukrainian, Russian, Jamaican. I felt privileged to be in that space. And so for me, New York, not just being the cosmopolitan city that it is, but also being surrounded by those friends who are still my best friends today, really have, grounded me. And I think, again, like I said, prepared me, I think, for where I am today. I attended Rutgers University, where I studied political science. And after graduating, I think I spent about a year or two kind of figuring out what I wanted to be, because initially I thought I was going to be a corporate lawyer because that's what my daddy wanted me to be. And I was like, nah, that's not for me. But Hollywood was calling me. I always thought that I wanted a career in, storytelling and producing, not to be in front of the camera, but be behind the camera, behind the scenes. And so I actually moved out to California and lived out there for about 3 years, lived in LA, worked in Hollywood, got to meet some of the superstars that are out there nowadays. Will Smith, worked with Vivica Fox, John Cryer, and Elliot Gould. Do you remember MASH?
Yes.
Yes, you're old enough to know MASH, so yes. Worked with Elliot Gould and a few other stars. So it was a great experience, but, New York kept calling me back. So after 3.5 years, I moved back to New York, where I ended up working in the news division and worked for CBS News as an associate producer. So the common thread was always storytelling. It's, telling stories, whether they're, real and or fictitious, was always something that was in me. And after a few years of doing that, I ended up meeting my husband and moving down here to the Virginia area, where I ended up continuing to work in news, and then ended up working in international development, where I landed at the Millennium Challenge Corporation, where you and I got to work together. Worked there for about 7.5 years, leading in, global communications, telling the stories of what our U.S. taxpayer dollars are doing in foreign assistance and helping to uplift the lives of the poor, and, the disenfranchised, really. Did that, was wonderful. But after having 4 kids at that time, by 2011, we went from a family of 4 to a family of 6, and life was changing very quickly. And I decided that I needed to look, slow down a little bit, look more internally within the organization instead of trying to tell the external story. It was what was happening internally. And after being there for so many years, it was very easy to kind of see okay, I think we need something, more to do with our employee engagement, how to make sure that our staff are engaged, et cetera. And there happened to be a position leading the diversity and inclusion space program. And I was able to move from being the director of communications to the director of D&I, where I served in that role for about a year and a half before I left. So my trajectory, going from, poli-sci to, Hollywood, then news business, and then kind of full circle to international development, where I kind of stayed until this career as well. Again, not the journey that I thought that I would be on, but it's, something that I'm glad that I ended up in, because it's actually opened up, the world to me even more. So I got the call during the campaign, not even during the campaign, after the campaign, because I got this position in earlier this year. But late last year, I got a phone call from someone who said, "Hey, we've got this position working in as the chief DEIA officer. Would you be interested?" I didn't think I would until I spoke with the administrator herself, and it convinced me that yes, this is the right move for me for now.
That is, and I'm very excited for you because I know I was there at MCC when we were trying to do everything like that at MCC, and it's hard to get a program off the ground.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that that's finally come full circle for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
And interestingly enough, I found it fascinating that you got your education in political science, but you didn't go into political science initially, but it came back at you like a boomerang. And now
Yes.
you're kind of, because the foreign aid space has really got a lot of political science.
No, absolutely. And like when I say that I did not want to do it, I literally did political science because I thought, again, I was going into, going to be a lawyer. So it's like, well, what else are you going to study undergrad? So it was like, well, let me just do poli-sci. But yeah, I did not think that this was the space I was going to be. Having parents who worked in the United Nations, I would hear the stories of development and, when you're, whether, because we were based in New York, so headquarters and, the work is really in the field. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is boring. Like, I don't want to do this work. Not to say that it's bad work, because it's great, right? You're out there and trying to, make the world a better place, but definitely not something that I saw me doing at all. Again, I saw myself more in the creative space. So I think once again, I was in college and I just realized, okay, I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And that's when after college, I said, okay, well, let me go and try and find my way. But yeah, here we are full circle. And I'm sitting here. My father laughs at me all the time.
Well, you went on to get further education as well, didn't you, in political science?
No, actually. So my grad school over at George Washington University is in, it's the a graduate degree in strategic public relations.
Ah.
And that is something that I actually embarked on late in life. Like actually a few years ago, I started the program because for me, I said, okay, as much as I appreciated, working in communications, global communications, and then working in the D&I space, I said, okay, if I wanted to, go back into the private sector and, probably pursue public relations and or comms, I kind of wanted to have the degree because it'd been so long since I'd worked in that area that felt like I needed a refresher. The world of communications has changed, as you know. So I said, well, let me go out there and, pursue this degree. And I'm literally 3 classes shy of getting my degree when I got this phone call to come on and, join the administration, which I was completely honored to do. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I just have 3 more classes. Can it wait? But no. And there's no way to do both. So once I'm done with my tenure here, I will definitely be going back to finish that degree.
Awesome. So, I mean, you've had a varied career, be it in Hollywood or the news media or in the foreign aid space. What's something you've noticed as you've gone through your career that if we came to you, Neneh, and said, you have the power to make a change, or maybe the change is too very, very large. Maybe it's something where you have the power to make us consider it's something we should change, right? That we've been doing in a way that could have some improvement, if you will. What's that item for you?
Something that we could change, like in my industry or in this industry at all. Mm-hmm. I hate to say it, but it's almost, I wish we didn't have to have my role. Right? For me, diversity, equity, and inclusion is just something that we should all embody, right? We should, and again, I take it as, from my upbringing in New York, from, living in that kind of cosmopolitan area to having friends who are just as diverse. It's not that we don't see and or appreciate each other's cultures. If anything, we totally are immersed in each other's cultures. If we didn't have to have this, the only reason why you have this role is because there's inequity. And not everybody has, the level, we need to level the playing field. Not everybody has a fair chance of, having an opportunity like I've had in terms of, these roles or others have, or you've had. But man, I would love if we didn't have to have my role.
Mm.
Everybody should have diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility as part of their jobs, as, written into their PDs. We should all be, judged against them, or in terms of our performance, every quarter, or every however many times people are getting their performance reviews. But yeah, if we didn't have to have this rule, then I think the world would be a better place. But then that's probably too ideal, right? That's too perfect. It wouldn't.
It's a tough change, but I agree with you. I mean, that's where I've been for a long time. Like you, I grew up in a military environment where it's as diverse as you could get. And so, yes, I agree. There's a reason for the position today, but I really wish there didn't need to be. I'm with you right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would change. But realistically, I say that again. I think if we're able to all come to the table and just say, you know what, we all realize that there's inequity. How can we make it better? And not look at people who don't come from privilege backgrounds and I think privilege is not, I don't ascribe it to just a color. We're all privileged. I'm privileged in my own way. But to say, okay, well, what can I do to make sure that the next person who doesn't have that opportunity has that opportunity? And so if all of us could help create that opportunity, realize and recognize that where we sit, we're lucky to be here. So let's, look back and help somebody who doesn't have that chance, and not look at them as less than, or make them feel marginalized because they didn't have the opportunity, or feel like I'm the savior because I'm helping that person, right? That attitude also has to change. And, in international development, I think we all fool ourselves in thinking that, we're all diverse here. You walk the halls of, whether it's this organization or any other organization that does international development, there's this sense of, we're not prejudiced. There's no bias here. Look at the work that we're doing. It's like, yeah, you're doing that work maybe to help other people because it makes you feel good about yourself. Look internally. What are you doing to change the lives of those that you are actually interacting with on a daily basis, who don't necessarily need your so-called, development assistance?
Right.
To me, sometimes that's where the conversation really has to happen, because people are not putting the mirror up to themselves. But that's what I would change if I could.
That's great change. So what's coming up for you in the near future? Anything exciting? Any big plans?
No big plans, Jeremy. Right now, my plate is full. I don't even have time to. I was always one who would write, I'd have an intention journal. I'd write down my 3 goals, what I'm going to work at, what I want to do in 90 days, 5 years from now, etc., and then work backwards. I don't even know what I'm having for dinner right now. That's how focused I am on the present. It's building an office, really trying to grow a team that are really going to be able to execute on, what, the Biden-Harris administration are trying to do in the space of, ensuring that we've got diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility, not just in the workplace, but in the work that we're doing across the globe. So for me, I am stuck in the present. Come find me in 2.5 years and I'll let you know.
No, that's perfect. And you're right. That's a big job. So I'm looking forward to catching up with you and hearing how it went. So thank you so much, though, for joining me on the podcast today. It's been great catching up with you, and
You too.
look forward to hearing more about what happens next.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Appreciate this. Good luck. I love this. The geek within.